It is very bright in this, and it looks like I died and went to post-rotation heaven. Hey, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be playing a post-rotation game. This one is between Gardevoir EX and a Arceus Rapid Strike Urshifu Dark type counter box thing. It's a deck that I actually really do like, though it certainly has its shortcomings. It has its problems. It has its fair share of problems, but if you're anything like me and looking forward to the first post-rotation regionals, these are two decks that I would recommend. The Rapid Strike Urshifu Arceus deck has answers for a lot of the stuff you have. Water, Dark, Psychic, Fighting, Arceus. What more do you need? And Gardevoir EX is just super consistent, and it hits for a ton of damage. What more do you need on that? But anyway, before we get into the video, if you haven't already, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. Tells YouTube this is a good channel. Other people should watch it. Thank you very much to everybody at Illustrious Cards and Games for not only playing these post-rotation games with me, but allowing me to record and put them up on YouTube. I wouldn't be able to do this without you, so thank you very much. And, yeah, we're just going to get right to it and enjoy the gameplay. Okay, gameplay is underway. I start with the Arceus, my opponent starting with the Ralt, and I believe my opponent goes, actually, I don't know who's going first here. My opponent is, so I must have missed it. Anyway, my opponent's starting off with the Fog Crystal, which goes ahead and lets you search a deck for a basic Psychic Pokemon or a basic Psychic Energy. My opponent playing the Gardevoir EX deck here, and I'm playing an Arceus counter box, which we'll talk about some of the struggles of Arceus, but it is one of those things. My opponent looking at that Radiant Greninja, so the Fog Crystal goes ahead and gets another Ralts. They have 3 Ralts in play at the moment. One of those things that you really want to have as many Ralts as you can in play, because you're always trying to evolve those Ralts into the appropriate Curlias. You're also trying to look for Gardevoir, whether it's Gardevoir EX or the Shining Arcana Gardevoir. You have the Buddy Catch Gallade. There's a lot of things that we can do with these evolving basics here. So my opponent playing an Ultra Ball, getting rid of his Psychic Energy and a Roxanne. Getting Psychic Energies into the discard is actually really good for my opponent's Gardevoir deck here, because Gardevoir EX allows you to search your deck for, it allows you to accelerate basic Psychic Energies from your discard to your Psychic Pokemon in any way you want. You can do it as many times as you want during your turn, which is absolutely ridiculous. That Ultra Ball is going to net them a Zacian V. This is the Zacian V from Celebrations. It has the ability Roar of the Sword, which lets you search a deck for a basic Psychic Energy, attach it to one of your Pokemon, and then your turn ends. So they're going ahead using the Forest Seal Stone here. I don't know if they're using the Forest Seal Stone or the Psychic Energy. It looks like they're going Roar of the Sword, so they're just getting that Forest Seal Stone and getting ready. But it is now my turn, and you can't see it, but I do have an energy in my hand. We'll talk about that in a second. I bench a Hoopa V. Hoopa V has the the Two-Face ability, which lets you attack as both a Psychic type and a Dark type attacker. So it just gives me more options in terms of what I go up against. So I play Ultra Ball to get a Galarian Moltres. Don't have the Dark Energy in the discard. I get rid of a Rapid Strike Urshifu V Max because against Psychic type Pokemon, you probably don't want to play Fighting type Pokemon that are weak to Psychic. So especially big 3 prize Pokemon that easily get taken out by a Gardevoir EX or anything like that. Now, I have an energy in hand, but I just said, you know what? I'm going to play Judge. I want to try to disrupt my opponent a little bit, and I want to try to find a double Turbo Energy so I can go ahead and get that my turn 1 Trinity Charge and start powering up these Dark type attackers before my opponent's board is set up too well. So I go ahead, I play the Judge, and we cut. Okay, cool. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I whiff energy, and that was so brutal. Not having a single energy means I'm probably not going to get to attack next turn either. At least if I had gotten an energy, I would have been able to attach and then evolve into an Arceus V-Star the following turn, and at least start to hit with something like Trinity Nova and get things going. Maybe to get one prize in the process. Maybe, use Starbirth to get a boss's orders, bring up one of their Curlias or the Zacian or something, just to start to put a little bit of pressure onto things while powering up my Dark type attackers in the process, but I don't. Which means I have to spend this next turn using Trinity Charge, so that's why I benched the other Arceus V. This way I can evolve the benched Arceus V into an Arceus V-Star to use the V-Star power to search for things I need. But, oh boy, it's a whole issue. Anyway, my opponent's turn, they're just searching their deck, which is why I'm kind of talking here. They do go ahead, they get a Level Ball, they get the Radiant Greninja. They get the Level Ball and do something else, I missed it. But they get a Curlia with the Level Ball. Only has 80 or 90 HP, so it's a valid target for the Level Ball. It's really good, and they'll be able to evolve it, which they do. They evolve the benched Ralts into a Curlia. Curlia has the Refinement ability, discard a card from your hand, and then you can draw 2 cards. Really good ability. So they're going to go ahead and use Concealed Cards, discard another Psychic Energy to draw 2. Another really good option for this Gardevoir deck. Discarding cards is great, especially discarding energies to draw. So they do happen to hit off of the Refinement, Judge, and the Concealed Cards. They hit the rare candy Gardevoir EX. So they just go right into Gardevoir EX. And now they can start accelerating those energies out of the discard using Gardevoir EX's ability, which is really not something I want to see. They're just kind of looking, reading the ability, making sure they can go anywhere they want. And they had a question on who takes the damage. Does the Gardevoir take the damage for using the ability, or does the Pokemon the energy is going to take the damage? The answer is the Pokemon that gets the energy gets the damage. So if they accelerate 2 here, that Gardevoir EX is going to take 40 damage. And they're going to hit for 190, which is really, really bad. Gardevoir EX has 310 health. So because I can't Trinity Nova, I can't do any damage. Like, I can't even put real pressure onto this Gardevoir EX. So, kind of annoying. It would have been great to get a Trinity Charge off last turn. It would have been even better if I'm able to Trinity Nova this turn. But here we are, not able to really make either thing happen. Because if I was able to Trinity Nova, I could have at least powered up those Pokemon on the bench pretty quickly, and then just attack with one of them. And then they don't really have much on the bench. There's not a ton going on, so they would have to spend a turn to get a Gardevoir EX into play, and then power it up with the ability that Psychic Embrace. They damage themselves in the process, and it's just they're always kind of behind at that point because they wouldn't take 2 prizes here, and I would be able to come back and get the first 2 prize KO, but it just didn't happen that way, unfortunately. And that is one of those big challenges that I talked about with Arceus decks that I alluded to at the beginning of the video. Arceus decks, if you don't hit energy first turn, or you don't have a method of getting energies immediately, like I can't. One option that I let me backtrack for a second. One option I really considered for this Arceus counter deck is energy switch, because what I could do then is discard an energy with Ultra Ball, use Dire Flame Wings to put the energy onto the Moltres, play, if I have an Arceus V-Star, I can use the V-Star power to get a double turbo energy and an energy switch, attach the DTE to the Arceus V-Star, play the energy switch to get the dark energy off of the Moltres onto the Arceus V-Star, and now I can Trinity Nova and power that Galarian Moltres and Hoopa up, and then if the Arceus V-Star gets knocked out, well then I can use Moltres' ability to get the energy that I originally got back onto. I know it's a little convoluted, complicated without seeing it happen, but there are strategies, there are things that I think would be better suited if I had built this deck that way. And my opponent going for the Weirdeer. Weirdeer is very, very scary because they can rack up a ton of damage. The more energies they get into the discard, they can pile them all onto the Weirdeer and just hit super, super hard. Kind of a problem. So, I apologize. There was a little bit of a break there. My opponent was trying to figure out if they had played a supporter this turn, and I didn't think they did. So they played a Professor's Research, they find the Weird Air, the Curlier, they used Refinement. Ton of draw, right? I mean, they drew 6 cards through the abilities of their Pokemon, plus Research. That's a lot of draw. They basically were able to play 2 Researches if you count the top deck. That's 14 cards in a single turn. All while improving their board state, right? All while getting energies into play, putting them into discard, so you're setting them up for following turns. You can see that they use the ability Psychic Embrace again on the Gardevoir to start powering up the Curlia, and they just go ahead and they use the Miraculous Force, whatever it is, does 190 damage to my Arceus V-Star, my opponent kicking the crap out of my setup here. Oh boy, just the way they were sitting made it, if they moved, they hit the setup, so I apologize for that, but it's fine. Just making sure that everything's still going on the recording. We're good. All right, it's my turn. This is actually the first time I'm watching it, so I wasn't really sure if everything was okay, but I'm glad to see that it was. So I evolved the benched Arceus V into the Arceus V Star, because if I evolve the active, well then I lose the Trinity Charge option, and I don't have, because I didn't get the Trinity Charge off last turn, I have to this turn. And like I said, I don't have a way of, there's no Melanie in this deck, which is something else you could consider. You do play Empoleon in this deck, so water energies are available. So perhaps Melanie is an option. This way, on turns you do miss your energy. At the very least, you can try a Melanie play if you have a water energy in hand. You can always Starburst. Like if you have an Ultra Ball on Melanie, you can Starburst for actually, you can get the water energy into DTE, and you can discard the water energy with the Ultra Ball. You can then Melanie it on, attach to DTE. There's a lot of different ways we can handle this. So I'm not sure which one I like the most. I think the Melanie is not a bad option. Energy Switch isn't a bad option. All these Pokemon need 3 energies to attack. I also kind of like, the more I think about it, the more I think of like Energy Switch, because Empoleon does require you to move an energy off of it after you use the attack. So I can use Energy Switch to put an energy back and then still attach and start to set up something else for the following turn. I do go ahead and I get a Remoraid into play. The reason I go with Remoraid is because at least I can, 1, get it out of the deck, and 2, for future turns, I can play Octillery and go ahead and get like a Corinna's Focus or something like that. That is a supporter I run. So at least it gives me a supporter out if I need one. Say I don't find one off the research I just played, or I don't have a very good hand, I can go ahead and get the Corinna's Focus. So there you see the Dire Flame Wings on the Galarian Moltres. And I'm going to do that, obviously, before I Trinity Charge. Just got to make sure that I'm able to do all the stuff that I want to do. So, and I just go ahead and do it. I just Trinity Charge. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to split these 3 energies up. I'm going to put 2 on to the Hoopa and 1 on to the Moltres. Why? Well, because I'm pretty sure I have an energy in hand, which allows me to just attach either one. So if my opponent, if they knock out the Hoopa, well then I can use the Dire Flame Wings to accelerate the dark energy that's on it onto the Moltres and start attaching to something else. If they knock out the Moltres, well then I can just attach to the Hoopa and attack and knock something out. So it leaves me a few different options. I do wish that I had gotten the Rapid Strike Urshifu, because one of 2 things. Either I get the Rapid Strike Urshifu and I put it on the bench and they have to boss it up to KO it, and that leaves my Psychic type, my Dark type attackers alone, or they deal with the Dark type attackers, and now I have a really good out for the Weirdeer, which is going to be a massive problem. So probably should have put the Urshifu into play just so I can split their attention and kind of force them to choose. You want to deal with my Psychic type, my Dark type attackers, that's going to one-shot all of your Gardevoir EX and Zacian V and stuff, or do you want to deal with the Urshifu before I can knock out that Weirdeer? It's just something that I probably should have considered, but here we go. My opponent just continuing to progress and set up their board. You see the Shining Arcana Gardevoir comes into play, and that lets him look at the top 2 cards of their deck, And if they find energies there, they can just attach those energies. Otherwise, they just draw the card. So really, really good ability. Everything about this Gardevoir deck is just accelerate, draw, accelerate, draw, accelerate. And then the more energies you have in play, the more damage you can do, because the Weirdeer can pull all the energies from your bench Pokemon to it when it moves into the active. And then you have Gardevoir to just put energies wherever you want. So what you can do is you can spread out all the energies onto your bench Pokemon. So one Pokemon's not taking a ton of damage from the Psychic Embrace. And then put Weirdeer in the active and move all those energies onto the Weirdeer. So now everything has like 20, 40, 60 damage instead of one Pokemon taking 200 damage or something like that. And here comes the switch. They're going to go into the Weirdeer. And this is where they have to start doing a little bit. I mean, they don't have to do a ton of math, because this Arceus is getting knocked out from the most basic Psy Shield Bash attack that this Weirdeer can muster. My opponent, very smart, not overcommitting energies onto the Weirdeer V. There's no real need. You're taking the knockout anyway, and you can always accelerate energies onto the Weirdeer later if you need. This gives you a good retreat option, so you can retreat into something else, use the Gardevoir to accelerate the energies, and then put them back. Like you can constantly do that rotation. It's actually a pretty good, annoying strategy. But there goes my opponent taking the first two prizes of the game, knocking out that Arceus, and I decide to send up the Hoopa. Hoopa can't. This is actually one of the big problems with this deck in particular, is that I have no way of dealing with that Weirdeer now. The Weirdeer is gonna be weak to fighting, but I say, you know what? That Gardevoir, it has a bunch of energies on it. I don't want him to be able to accelerate those energies too much. So I don't really have much else to do. It's just take the two prizes on the Gardevoir EX and knock it out. Now it's going to force them to send up something else, which is good for me, because they send up, say, like the Zacian. Now unless they find another Gardevoir EX, they're not able to recover those energies as easily. Now you can see that they do have one in the hand, and they have a Curlia on the bench. So unfortunately for me, it's one of those things that I just didn't. My opponent just happens to have it, and you can see they use the trade ability before evolving into the Gardevoir, which is really smart. The deck is getting a little thin at this point, but it doesn't really matter too much. They only really need 2 more attacks, 3 at the most to win, and they don't have to continuously use the Greninja and Refinement abilities. They can just kind of draw off a turn. But they have the Gardevoir, and that's one of the advantages of the Gardevoir deck, is that you get to just draw so much. You are constantly drawing cards, and so finding things like that Gardevoir EX, finding an Ultra Ball, finding whatever, is pretty easy to do. So I don't have the response that I was hoping I would. I was kind of hoping that they'd be maybe a little stuck in just attacking with a pretty weak Psy Shield Bash, letting me give time to hit into that the Weirdeer again and be able to KO it before it gets too problematic. But unfortunately for me, no such luck, as it pretty much happens all the time to me. I just, for whatever reason, I just never seem to have the luck. And here goes my opponent evolving into the Gardevoir EX. 310 health on a 2-prize Pokemon is pretty solid. Now, it is a stage 2, but honestly, you don't really care about being a stage 2 when the stage 1 Pokemon is also really, really good. And as I mentioned before, you have so many different options as for how you want to evolve that stage 1. The Gardevoir EX, the Shining Arcana sitting right next to it, or even the single prize Gallade, I think it's from Astral Radiance, that lets you just search your deck for a supporter and put it into your hand, which is nuts. It's absolutely nuts, because what you can do with that combo, you get the Gallade, you use the Gallade to search for Cheryl, you accelerate all the energies from your discard that you possibly can onto your Gardevoir EX. It takes a bunch of damage. Put Weirdeer into the active, pull all the energies off of the Gardevoir onto that Weirdeer. Weirdeer's going to hit for massive damage, but you're still sitting there with a bunch of damage on that Gardevoir. Well, that's where the Cheryl comes in that you got from the from the Glade, because now you can heal all damage from your evolution Pokemon. But Cheryl says you have to discard all energy attached to the Pokemon after you heal. However, you have already moved all the energies off of it, which is super incredible. So my opponent here moving, they're just doing a little bit of math. They're just trying to see what energies they have in play. So try to figure out how many they have to move before they can knock out this Hoopa. Kind of annoying. So Psychic Bass does 40 damage for each psychic energy attached to each energy attached to the Weirdeer. It's enough for the KO. My opponent going down to just 2 prizes remaining, and I am in a world of trouble. I don't have a way of one-shotting this Weirdeer. I think people are walking by, and it's like messing with the lights, so the camera tries to adjust. So I apologize for like when it gets randomly bright. Not much I can do about it in just the storefront. So I Dire Flame Wings and energy onto the Galarian Moltres so I can attach an energy to the Arceus V. This way at least I have something for the following turn. And we played the Heavy Ball, just kind of get a peek at the prizes. We get an Urshifu V. It's not really very helpful at this point. I need to either attach an energy to it this turn or find an Urshifu V Max so that I can use Gale Thrust, which will do 300 damage onto a fighting weak Pokemon. But I have to bench it this turn. But again, it's really dangerous to bench a 2-prize Pokemon that's weak to Psychic, because all my opponent has to do, retreat the Weirdeer, accelerate some energies to a Gardevoir, and then boss up the Urshifu, and that's game. Or just accelerate a bunch of energies to the Weirdeer, and then hit the Moltres. I don't think it matters too much. Anyway, this is probably my last turn of the game because I can't deal with the Weirdeer. Even if I did deal with the Weirdeer, my opponent plays Miriam, which lets you shuffle Pokemon, up to 5 Pokemon from your discard back into your deck. So if they get the Miriam, which I'm pretty sure I saw that they had in their hand from, during this voiceover, not during the game, they play Miriam, and then they Ultra Ball or Nest Ball for the Weirdeer back into play. They promote it and just accelerate a bunch of energies to it, and then there you go. They just KO whatever's in the active anyway. So because I couldn't deal with the Weirdeer last turn, or the turn before I was able to start taking these KOs, there's really not much I can do about it now. And this is where whiffing that energy at the very beginning of the game really, really comes back to haunt me. It's something that simple. Something as so simple as missing an energy for turn is detrimental. It's terrible. So we go ahead. At this point I say forget it. Right? If it doesn't matter what I do, they're gonna be able to deal with the Weirdeer. So I just retreat into the Remoraid, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go into the Remoraid, force them to have a boss's orders or an escape rope or something like that. You can see they're really getting down to the last couple of cards in that deck, but even then, I still need an Urshifu VMAX and a fighting or rapid strike energy, some type of energy to use Gale Thrust with. And then, even then, the Gardevoir, all they have to do is accelerate energies to it, and they attack with the Miraculous Force attack. Boom, that's enough to KO. It doesn't really make a difference. So no matter what at this point, just not a very good matchup. They have the boss anyway, so they're able to bring up the Urshifu and take the KO for the game. It's way more than they need, right? There's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 22, 24, 32. They're hitting for a massive amount of damage. They thought they were hitting for more. Weirdeer is not a Psychic type Pokemon, so they thought they were hitting for weakness, Weirdeer is not a Psychic type Pokemon. It's a normal type. Something to keep in mind. Make sure you know the damage that you're doing. But yeah, overall, my opponent played this super, super well. And thank you very much to them for allowing me to record the game and putting it up on YouTube. So there you have it. Rapid Strike Urshifu Arceus box. is a little finicky at times, and if you miss those energies, you could be in a lot of trouble. But hopefully you don't. Hopefully you have better luck than I do. But that's gonna do it for us today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found it informative. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff tells YouTube this is a good channel. Other people should watch it, and I'll see you next time.